Hello and welcome to Tell Us Your Effing Story, a podcast by franchisors for franchisors where we go behind the scenes into some of the most interesting people in the franchising community. I'm Bruce McFarlane, your host. I'm the CEO of BDC Partners. My co-host, Jon Sully. Mm-hmm. Welcome, John. And today we're with David Stafford. So, Dave, welcome.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the invite.
Righto, mate. Tell us your fucking story.
Okay, John. It's franchising story, Dave. He's bringing the level down nice and early, but, you know. So we're going to go. I'll take control of. We'll try. I'll try. As you know, herding cats. So we're going to go right back. You know. So tell us, where did you grow up? You from? Are you a Melbourne boy or?
Yeah. Born on the first floor of Myers in Ringwood.
Right.
Well, there used to be a maternity hospital there.
Yeah.
Back in the day.
Eastland.
Well before Eastland was built.
Yeah. So
Eastern suburbs. Most of my life.
Yep. Still out that way.
Yeah. Out in the gateway to the Yarra Valley.
Yeah.
Beautiful part of the world.
A lovely part of the world.
Yeah.
Lovely part of the world.
So you grew up out there and, went to school in Ringwood?
Went to school in Norwood. So if there's other Ringwood people listening, I was the rival school at Norwood. Yeah. So Norwood Primary, Norwood High.
Yeah. And
left high school intending to go down a sort of applied chemistry path. But found myself in television and then electronic sales and then all sorts of different places. But
we'll go before we get to all that stuff. So family, like what did you like as a kid, like outside of school?
I was a pretty crook kid, so I had asthma pretty badly.
Yeah.
So I was indoors.
Yeah.
I didn't learn to swim till I was 16 or 17.
Oh, right.
Stuff like that. That was back in the day when kids with asthma didn't do stuff.
Yeah.
Right. So my upbringing was really classical music, and Mum was an extraordinary pianist. So
wow.
I've played piano since I was 6 or 7 or something like that. So, I spent my time.
Do you still play?
Yeah, most days.
That's great.
Yeah, most days. Just for fun.
What do you old stuff or do you rock it out?
Oh, no. I'm very much brought up on the classics.
Right.
So
good on you.
Yeah, it's
very cool.
Very enjoyable.
And family, what did Mum and Dad do? Dad
was in banking and started off his working career as a ledger boy with the State Bank of Victoria and wound up working for them all their lives. And Mum was pre-marriage a stenographer and stay-at-home mum, then back to sort of working in schools and stuff like that. So very, very deep suburbia, middle class.
Siblings as well?
A couple of sisters and a brother.
Yeah.
I'm sort of in the middle.
Yeah.
If that's possible with 4.
At 4, yeah. You still have 2 weird middle children in 4s, yeah.
Yeah.
Not just one.
Well, I joke and I wonder who was left with behind the door when the brains were handed, whether it was me or my siblings. But I've not quite worked that out.
And are they still all up that way, or have they moved?
Yeah, look, essentially, yeah. My elder brother, and my younger sister are out that way, and my other sister's on the other side of town.
Yeah, great.
So we got a tribe of kids between us and grandkids for the folks.
And school, you love school? Well, you must be good if you were going to get into chemistry or whatever.
Oh, look, maths and chemistry was my thing, and I enjoyed that. Following on from my older brother, who was well smart, probably well smarter than I would ever be.
Don't admit it. This is like we're recording, okay? He might watch this.
But we always got that. You should be doing better than that. You're Neil's brother, that sort of thing.
Yeah,
so
right.
That was not so enjoyable. But I wasn't a sporting kid, so I wasn't out on the sporting field and playing footy and that sort of stuff. So it was.
And did you work at school jobs during school and stuff like
just
that?
Local milk bar. And stacking shelves and.
I might have worked for my granddad. Which did you work at a 4 Square supermarket?
I did not work at 4 Square supermarket.
Because that's right. You're
my grandparents had 2 shops in Ringwood. So in the 60s. So Mum was.
Whereabouts were they?
So in Ringwood. I don't actually remember exactly where they were, but yeah, Mum worked in my grandpa's business, and another franchisor, Dave Milne's family, had the one in North Ringwood, and then Pop had the ones in Ringwood.
That became Tuckerbag, I guess.
Yeah, they were pre-Tuckerbag days, but yeah, so you're in a milk bar, so you're in Ringwood.
Yeah.
Not in the supermarkets.
No, I did a summer in the milk bar and did a couple of summer jobs with Myer in the credit department.
Yep.
Folklore and legend is I declined the owner of Myers a credit purchase. which rapidly got fixed. I might quickly say.
Short career there then.
Yeah. Just the 1 year.
And then you've got into media. So you wanted at Channel 7.
It was really funny. I'd started HSC as it was in those days, and heading down this sort of applied chemistry, industrial chemistry path. And a phone call came one day, and there was a job at Channel 7. Dad said, "Go and do it." So went and did it.
Did you have an interest in media at school, or you just
sound? I was very interested in sound.
Okay.
The music thing and recording and how does that all happen?
Yeah.
And, that sort of stuff. So
passion for music. So
So I spent 6 years there, and then into a couple of firms that sold products and services into the television, radio, recording industry. Wound up with Ampex, who was a big name in television, radio, and recording.
So what year are we talking now?
That would have been 85, 87 ish, somewhere around there. Worked with them for a few years, and a role became available in the Deep South in the States, in Opelika, Alabama. So I stuck up my hand, and 3 months later, there I was with 10 suitcases and
a couple of kids,
couple of kiddies, 7 and 4.
Yep.
Wow.
And spent 5.5 years of the best years of our lives there. It's fantastic.
Fantastic.
It was great.
Good people over there.
Fantastic. But much maligned by the rest of the country, I have to say.
Yeah, right.
But the Southerners.
So what was the company called?
Ampex.
Yep.
Which was invented videotape recording, very big in the recording industry. Lots of Emmys and Grammys and Emmys for sort of technology, inventions. And
God, that would have been interesting.
It was fascinating.
And the kids, how old were the kids when they went over?
4 and 7. When
okay, so just starting school.
Yeah, easy to move.
Yeah.
Not like they were entrenched in high school or something like that.
It's interesting. I've got a few mates that went to school in the States when they were younger, and they kept them an American accent just on for certain words, despite the fact that they only lived there for 5 years. Did your kids, when they got home, get teased because they were American?
Well, no. but my youngest, when we were first there, we put him into kindergarten, preschool, kindergarten, and we dropped him off this first morning, and this woman, with the big southern hair and the whole bit, picks him up and says, "Now, bye to mama." And Patrick says, "Bye." And from that moment on, he was a southerner.
Yeah.
Wow.
Until he came back, and we can still hear it today.
Yeah. It is. They keep this
you
certain words.
just
if you learn under 12, you keep stuff.
The odd word or two, but and they still remember things that happened way back when.
And you're the only Aussies in town?
No, there was a professor of applied mathematics at the university that was in town who we happened to get in touch, and we've become friends over the years and stayed in touch.
So I lived in the US in the 80s, and Crocodile Dundee came out in 1986, and so it was like the biggest thing. Everybody just thought that's the only thing. The only thing they knew about us was Crocodile Dundee. It's like nothing. And I imagine that the local kids wouldn't have known anything about Australia for your kids.
No, we did the rounds of the local schools. Here's the money and here's the flag and this is where we are, and when it's summer here, it's winter there, and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. So we did that tour and dog and pony show.
I took a footy as well because I'm.
Well,
they're like, that's a crazy game. Yeah. So you the States, and then you've come back to Australia.
Yeah. Came back late 90s, mid-late 90s.
Yep.
Jumped into a consulting role with IF Asia Pacific, which was Howard Bellin's company, who'd been very early proponent of franchising in Australia. Worked there for a little while.
So you didn't know anything about franchising at this point?
No, not at that stage. But whilst I was in the States, as well as being a product manager, I sort of inherited sort of caretaking of all the distributors in South America and our offices in the Asia Pac region. So I sort of got really interested in distribution and how distribution happens. And at the same time, managed to do an MBA at the local university. In the States.
Oh, cool.
The company had a great education program, which was
that's all right.
fantastic.
They paid for it?
Yeah. Yeah, it was fantastic. And so, combination of really interesting in distribution, but also how do you get other people to do, fall in line with that? And those two things came together with the consulting work we did with IF Asia Pacific, and then subsequently moved on to a small boutique firm with a couple of colleagues, and then after that to DC Strategy with Rod.
And so just before we get to the franchising world, so what sort of things were you learning as consulting, which I always would talk about that. What's a consultant do? Like you have to help people with their business, but you're not necessarily an expert in the industry or the product or the service.
Well, but that's a good thing, right? Because if you're not an expert in the product or service that person happens to offer, you've got a little bit of, you come at it with a little bit of naivety. Right, and a little bit of objectivity, and don't necessarily accept just what is the status quo. So I did a project with a client who shall remain nameless, but they had 90% of their distribution was through one company, through a bricks and mortar network. And I said, this is really a risk. This, 90% of this growing market segment you've got tied up. They changed their mind, man. Your business is sunk. And no, that's never going to happen. About 3 or 4 years later,
it did.
It did.
Yeah.
And they were in Queer Street. So, you learn to look at businesses not necessarily for their product or not necessarily for their service, but for the essence of what that business is. There was a prize, an industry prize in the States, in the South, where you had to compare yourself or your product or service against another like product or service, but from a different sector. And the guy that won it one year was in concrete, and they'd compared themselves to Domino's Pizza, I want to say. And you look at that and you say, what on earth have those two things got in common? But their submission was, both these products are made to order, they're made just in time, they're delivered to site, and they're consumed all within a very, very short period of time. And that was the essence of the business. And so they compared themselves to this other business.
Interesting angle.
Really interesting angle.
Yeah.
So, the consulting thing was, you start off pretty green.
Yeah.
Right?
Now, it's interesting because you've got into, you've come along, you've done an MBA and obviously educated, but then
but that's all theory. Right?
That's all theory. That's right. That's the point. Whereas you've learnt in different sectors that have got nothing to do with the end companies that you're working with. And then I guess the next step is franchising. So again, not a lot of, distribution is something you've done before, and you've got a role at DC, and Rod's, so
I had done some franchising at IF, so I sort of had some reasonable background in that by the time I hit IF, and then it was franchising full on.
At DC,
DC.
So DC, you've done a pretty good stint there. I think I looked up, it was
6 years.
6 years, yeah. So you were there for quite a while. You've at a time where there's a lot of businesses that were franchising. The code had come in, and then there was a lot of appetite for people to franchise their business in Australia. We're heavily franchised, per capita, as we all know, and so there was a lot of activity in the marketplace.
Certainly was pretty busy.
And Rod's got had a couple of pretty good stories along the way, where success stories that franchise. So you've come in the business, and it would have been exciting times.
Absolutely was. I think that for me, I get stimulated by the intellectual rigor. To give me a problem, let me solve that. Right? Sort of scratch that scab for a little while and see what comes out of it. So that was really interesting. And of course, you're dealing with young folks that have come straight out of uni, or a couple of years in one of the big 4 accounting firms.
In your business?
Yeah. So smart people where you can have really robust conversations, right? And the beauty of that was that they were unfettered by any sort of ego or politics or anything like that. You could just have really open, robust, deep discussions about what was right for this business and what was wrong for this business.
And so in that process, we've obviously got a business at BDC where we look at businesses from the start, whether we help them to franchise or whether we invest in them. There's a few different things. And I know DC at the time, still does and was doing things like that. So how were you, looking at these businesses? Should it franchise? Like, what sort of things were you?
Well, the general thing we wanted to see was that there was already replicated units on the ground, right? Whether it's stores, vans, man out of a van
Yep.
doing things, whatever it was. Was there replicating this? And not just one. You know, have you done this 3, 4, 5, 6 times? Is there a real model there?
Yep.
That can be picked up and taken, and can it be articulated and documented so that when I give it to you, you've got the guts of it, you know how to get that done, right? So that was sort of base requirement. And then you looked at the individuals and say, you got the capacity. Have you got the capacity to actually do this? Right?
How's that gone when someone, you look at them and you go, they've come in and they're all excited and they've got 5 stores and then they're like, we're going to franchise, and you're like, that's not going to work.
Well, the discussion might have been something along the lines of, okay, well, you're going to need a person with this skill and that skill and this skill. Do you have those? Knowing full well they probably didn't.
And whether they're self-aware to know that.
You know, and you could have that. You could have that discussion over a course of time.
Yeah.
There were people that came into it with, well underfunded, and so they were doing 95 things and every job known to man, and didn't have the capacity to fund.
That would have been most of them.
Yeah, and I think that piece of work that the other John has done about the number of franchise systems in the country that are 25 units or less.
That was him.
Oh, that was you, John.
That wasn't.
It's not the other John at all.
No.
That sort of,
Tells a story.
it does tell a story. Right?
Mm.
But we found that there are a lot of entrepreneurs, would-be franchisors that were, no one can do that quite like I can.
Mm.
That sort of mentality. They're a bit reluctant to let their baby go.
Mm.
So that was a challenge for some people.
And what was a good one? Like, so you worked on a few different ones over 6 years. So have you got like one that really stands out as a business that you thought was going to go gangbusters and has gone pretty well?
There was I'm not sure how many names I can name.
Oh.
So Total Tools, we worked on Total Tools in the very early days when it was a co-op, and talked to the then current owners as becoming a franchise and what that all entailed and what an exit strategy looked like for them over the course of time. And Metcash wound up buying that.
Yeah, that's
over 2 or 3 tranches, I think.
My law firm were involved in that one.
But
That was a good one.
the size of those stores now is just so much bigger than they were.
Yeah.
I mean, really smart business, and kudos to the 24 people that founded the joint and made it work for the first however many years it ran.
It's really interesting, is that evolution from co-op, because it was pretty big in the, my parents' business, and lots of businesses were that buying groups or co-ops and stuff like that. And that was an example that converting to a franchise model, which these guys did the work, it went like that. Like,
so how many did they have when all that happened?
It was 24 originally, 23, 24. And I think now they're about 110, 120, something
they sold
like
for
that.
a big number.
But sold
big turnover, though, wasn't it?
Yeah, but
Still
at the start it wasn't.
there.
It wasn't.
The
They were little.
store footprint was relatively small compared to today.
Yeah,
The
right.
store footprint is much, much bigger.
Yeah.
Turnover per store is much, much bigger. And kudos to the people that actually did the hard yards building that. I mean, the strategy is one thing, the actual doing of it. Different.
Yeah.
So, David, when was all this? When were you there? What years was that? Like early
12 years
2000s?
ago.
97 to 2000. No, that was
No.
2006
Later.
to 2013.
Okay, right.
2006.
That's interesting. It's a good space. I mean, they're pretty exciting to see some of the things that are coming across your desk to say, look, here's our 3 or 4 stores, or as you say, whatever the widget. What do you think?
I did a project with 2 couples that owned this business in the fitness space, and we were modelling it out and doing all of the numbers on it. And I keep saying to there's something wrong with this model. This thing's making too much money. And delved into it. Sure enough, there was just so much money in this business. It was unbelievable. Unbelievable.
And it was a legal business, was it?
Yeah.
Right.
Very legal. I'm not sure that their tax side of things was particularly legal, but we'll leave that for another discussion.
Yeah.
I was just looking at where we set up. Sorry to distract you. No, because you're leaning more and more that way.
Right. Sorry. I was just...
But there was that one. There was I did some work with Laser Clinics Australia early on. So they sold to KKR, I think it was.
Yep.
In about 2017 or something for a pretty decent number.
Yep.
So what would you say? Was there a common, trend when you went through these processes with these businesses? Did you see a common issue that there was anything that you could say, you know what, this is what you guys need to focus on at the start? That was really prevalent.
I think Greg Nathan's talked for many years about moving from being compliant to being in a partnership, and there were a lot of clients early on that sort of had a very compliance-driven set of thinking. Hey Dave, can we do this? Yeah, you can, but do you really want to? Is that going to drive the best outcome? So I think understanding the context of franchising and understanding that it really should be a partnership between two parties that bring different things to the table and work in cooperation to drive an outcome. I think that was probably one of the learning curves for a lot of the clients we worked with. And I think the other thing was clients that just, weren't emotionally prepared to let go and let other people do things in the business.
Yeah.
I knew a founder of a retail network, and I found her unpacking boxes at a new store. And, but no one can do that just quite like I can.
Yeah.
Those words exactly. And this is a smart woman.
Yeah.
Right. No, come on.
And did you see that the ability to let go? Okay, I'll rephrase the question. What do you think stops a lot of companies from taking that next step to get over?
But it's their baby, right? They've grown up with it. They've developed it. They've lived it. They've breathed it. I get it. And it served them well up until that point because it's got them to be 3, 4, 5, 10, 20,
24.
Whatever it is, right? And that's great. No shame in that. They're emotionally invested in it. But there was an exercise we used to do with clients that needed to know that lesson. And we'd send them away and we'd say, divide up everything you do during the week, divide it up between that is core to my role. I've got to do that because it's core to my, so I might have to drive to a meeting. Okay, well, it's not core to your role, but you've got to drive, right? There's things that you can avoid because somebody's made a mistake, someone else has made a mistake, so there's a process flaw or something. And there's stuff that you're doing that could easily be delegated to somebody else. Now, I can hear people I've worked with saying, you're a fine one to talk, David, delegation, right? Because I'm a bit like that. No one can do that quite like I can.
Yeah.
But, once you got them to do that and they laid out, what are you doing? What are you doing during your week? I mean, what was really essential that you did versus what was really essential that somebody else did? Or really valuable that somebody else could do and do well because it freed you up to do more of the stuff that you should be doing. So it's sort of working through not being the founding entrepreneur, but being the growth-minded leader was part of the journey for a lot of our clients.
Yep.
So it was an interesting journey for a lot of them.
So then you've got out of the consulting world into the franchisor world and taking a role within a franchise system and a big one at that. So and tyres, had you had background?
No background in what. But see, I maintain, Bruce, that a product is a product, right?
Yeah.
There are plenty of people that will understand the product, right? What I needed to do when I joined Goodyear was understand franchisees and franchising and how the network worked. And plenty of people that understand.
And under multiple brands, US owned, so
US owned.
Yes.
Regional headquarters in China.
Yep.
In Australia, Goodyear owns the Dunlop brand as well.
Yep. So 3.
So Goodyear Auto Care was a franchise network. Dunlop Super Dealer was a licensed network.
Yep. And Bow Repairs.
And Bow Repairs was the corporately owned stores. So, incredible business.
So you've come in, how many stores, like when you joined, so what's that, 11 years ago, 12 years ago?
When I joined, my two channels, which were the Goodyear and the Dunlop channel, were 230 stores.
Between the two of them?
Between the two of them.
Yep.
When I left, they were 370.
Yep. And so your role was development, growth?
Everything.
Yep.
P&L. Where's the next
onboarding?
Where's the next store coming from? How are we going to recruit them? Where are we going to put them?
And so your roles previously, there's obviously a big sales element of what you're doing there. So, in some respects,
not so much sales because I had a sales team.
Oh, right.
Right? Who knew tyres? Who knew?
Yep.
Okay, that's
Good talk the talk.
That's a. I'm going to get this all wrong, but it's a XXXYY corridor, and it takes this size, and I've seen the art of selling in a very raw environment. I mean, tyre dealers are pretty blokey blokes by and large, but salt of the earth and loyal to a T once you win their loyalty.
Yep.
And the beauty of it is, if you do something wrong or they've got an issue, they'll tell you. Fantastic.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, the old saying, feedback's a gift. It's no matter how it's wrapped.
Yeah.
Right? So that can be pretty sharp.
Yep.
And let you know.
So did you have a lot of direction from the US, or was it pretty much Australia had a lot of autonomy?
Australia had a lot of autonomy. There was direction from the region, and ultimately there would have been direction from the US. But in my particular space, I was pretty isolated from that, and work with the managing director and other senior leaders to sort of execute what we had to execute, and there was various plans for that.
And so you developed your own processes around recruitment. So, like in terms of interviewing the steps to bring them onto into the networks.
We actually implemented more recently. We implemented Brendan Green's franchise cloud solutions, which for a recruiter, it's just a breeze. That makes that whole process. You can simplify that down to a very, very solid process.
Yep.
We recruited, we onboarded, some of it better than others.
And
selected the right people a lot of the time, and got it wrong a couple of times.
Was the growth from consolidation, or was it greenfield?
It was generally, so when you say consolidation,
Conversion.
probably conversion from another brand was
or independent brand,
either an independent or from one of the other tyre brands.
So who else is so independents like a Bob Jane? Who are the other biggies out there?
Bob Jane, Jack's Tyres, Tyre Power.
Tyre Power, that's right.
Bridgestone.
Yeah.
Michelin's got a program. Yokohama's got.
And were they all separate? Are they all Were they all separate, or was it a bigger company like Goodyear that owned a couple of those? Did they own Jackson?
So Goodyear's a manufacturer and franchisor, which I'm not sure that always makes for the best outcomes, because you've got competing interests at play. Yeah, Bob Jane's pure franchise, Jack's a pure franchise, although now owned by Hancock. Tyre Power is an independent co-op. And then there's Billy Blogg's Tyre Service. And
is there quite a few little sort of one-off randoms like that?
Yeah, thousands.
Yeah, okay. I've got a mate of mine that does the the van. What's it called? They go to your house and do your
mobile tyre service.
Yeah, that's it.
Travis.
Yeah, Travis Osborne. Yeah. So because he used to be a leasing guy like me back in the day many years ago. So that's an interesting business, because they're in the UK, they're massive over there. Those mobile tyres.
Mobile tyres. Yeah, I think in Europe is pretty substantial.
Do any of those other brands did you guys? Did you do mobile?
No, we didn't do mobiles. A couple of them networks have tried it.
Yeah,
but I'm not sure it's ever been a raging success. I could be quite wrong on that.
So I'm going to say we've only got a couple more minutes, so we're just talking about the things you've as a consultant and then as a franchisor. A lot of the people that listen to the podcast are emerging franchisors or thinking about franchising and stuff like that. So any sort of lessons or tips for someone who's about to start that franchising journey?
I think the biggest thing is surround yourself with people that know more than you do. Right? I mean, the old adage that when you're sitting at a table, always assume that someone across the other side knows something you don't. Right? Be willing to admit that you don't know it all, and there's stuff to be learnt from a wide variety of people.
Yep.
Whether that be consultants in the franchising space, or whether it be people that are
other franchisors,
visual merchandising specialists, or other franchisors that you admire, or other businesses that are of like kind.
Yeah.
But not necessarily competitive. You can learn a hell of a lot.
And what about the emerging franchisors? There's a lot of them that have got 15 or 20 or things like that. You've worked at a big system, but you've also set up systems. But that middle ground,
for me, I think it's that learning to let go.
Yeah.
Learning to let others take the baby. I sort of liken it to you've had the baby when it was a newborn. You've had it during infancy. You've got it through its toddler stage. Now it's off to school, right? And it's going to take other input.
And then it's a teenager.
God no.
Uncontrollable teenager that thinks you don't know anything.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That old thing about when I was 15, I thought my dad didn't know anything, and when I was 21, I was amazed what he'd learned in the last 6 years.
I don't know if it's 21 or I'd say 30. I'd go with 30. Thank you very much, mate.
My
Thanks
pleasure.
for your time. Thanks for coming in. Great to hear your
Thanks,
story.
David. Lovely to meet
Thanks,
you.
John.
Good on
Thanks,
you.
boys.